Hello, this is Craig Mertens. I am the General Manager of GraphicsFlow. We have a special guest today, KJ Jaramillo, from our Chief Marketing Officer from InkSoft. We have the big cheese, the main man, the guy that makes my job easy and keeps those leads pouring in the doors. So we are really excited to have KJ in the class. We're going to be doing a class on a very important topic here, which is social media. And I shouldn't have to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. Part of our goal, we were talking before the class, part of our goal is to encourage people to be involved in social media. And from my perspective, I don't know how you feel about this, KJ, but it seems like people could kind of coast pre-pandemic, maybe not have an active social media presence, but it doesn't seem like you can do that today. What are your thoughts on that?
No, we've seen a huge, well, first, let me just stop and thank you, Greg, for having me. I really appreciate
Oh,
that.
my pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys about something that's near and dear to me, which is marketing and more importantly, social media. What we've seen with the onset of COVID is a direct shift in the way that customers are interacting with brands and companies online. Before COVID, it was it was kind of given that companies would have a profile on a social media account, but it wasn't always a given. But post-COVID, we've started to see businesses rush to get set up when they weren't necessarily set up before because there's been an increase in most cases in digital shopping online. So post-COVID, we've seen about a 15 to 30% increase in most categories on online purchasing, and particularly a 19% increase in the apparel space.
Wow.
So before, where you had a large percentage of the people that were shopping online in apparel, that has even grown up to even more, to about 71% of the people of apparel shoppers are expected to make a portion of their purchases through social media. So it's extremely important.
I agree. And one of the things that I've kind of categorized it this way is kind of found like clients were kind of fall into three little pots, so to speak. Pot one was the hibernators. Those are the folks that the pandemic hit. They went underground, and I don't see those folks, a lot of those folks surfacing. They pop up and they're looking around and they're like, hey, where's all the food? And they'll, you were hibernating and the other animals ate the food and there's no food for you. And so we saw that group, and then I kind of felt like there was a status quo group that we're just gonna. A lot of the brick and mortars are that way. I don't know if you've seen that. They try to status quo and just do things the way they always did, but consumer habits shifted so much to online that they just don't have the foot traffic and the business that they did. Those folks seem to be holding their own, but they're not thriving. And then there's that group that you were talking about. These folks that migrated to online selling and active social media, and these are the folks that are. I call them on the phone. They're like, "Hey, Craig, I can't talk. I'm too busy." We got, plus they spend a third of their day trying to track down blanks to print on,
Yeah.
maybe more than that. So I'm in a complete agreement with you on the importance of social media. As far as the consumer habit shifting to online purchasing, what do you think? Is it just been driven out of necessity because of a pandemic, or was this inevitable and just accelerated it?
It was inevitable and it just accelerated, but what it really did was kind of expose a lot of businesses, and a lot were kind of caught off guard with
Mm.
the shift and how quickly the shift their customers would take to shifting to online preferences. One of the things that we do here at InkSoft and GraphicsFlow is we let data kind of drive our marketing decisions. And so in thinking through this and thinking through like why having a social media presence is super important, I like to think of it through kind of the data. And there's some interesting things that I've come to learn through the pandemic and post-pandemic, or whatever that looks like, returning back to normal in terms of social media. Half the customers are going to learn about brands on social media. The social media is a place really for them to discover a brand. It's where it's common for brands or companies to kind of share their story, what they're doing in the community, information about their employees, their businesses, as well as doing promotional things. It's not only that they go to social media to sell, but they're also going to build communities. And especially with younger buyers are flocking on social media, and they use that for what we call brand discovery. So in other words, it's where they can be exposed to a particular company or a particular brand. And we're seeing that more and more every day. And honestly, if your company or your brand is not really poised to capitalize on these growing social media networks, those customers that you would normally have are most likely going to discover your competitors first, Craig.
I agree. You know, it was interesting. I remember a poignant experience that I had at a trade show where under 30-year-old gentleman, he basically, the first thing he wanted to see on our website was our Instagram. And at the time, we had a terrible Instagram. And he was like, he just was gone. He was like, oh, I checked your Instagram, not impressed. I
Yeah.
was like, what? And then I got back to the office and I talked to my partner. I was like, we got to get our Instagram spruced up. So we hired we hired a intern from Arizona State that had 100 and some thousand followers on Instagram. And boy, she got it spruced up in a hurry. That she knew exactly what to do and how to get it looking good. So I want to talk a little bit about the social media platforms that are out there. And this is kind of my 2 cents on it. I've got a huge Twitter following for my sports addiction, and that's where I go to get news. But I'm really not concerned about seeing company information or shopping for companies on Twitter. In fact, a lot of times I'll block people. It seems like because we have the new online gaming in Arizona, it seems everything that comes up on Twitter and Facebook is going to be um, online related to online gaming. So I really felt like Twitter was a great avenue for small businesses in terms of social media. But everybody's familiar with Facebook, and Facebook is controversial. I'll talk to clients, and as soon as you bring up Facebook, oh, we don't do Facebook, but I'm like, hey, you might not do Facebook, you know what? But your customers do. And no matter how you feel about, Zuckerman and that whole crew and the branding change and whatever, your interests are, it is a foundational part of how a company markets their business. And
Yeah.
I think most people know that Instagram and Facebook are part of the same company. They're pretty interconnected. So we're going to kind of focus more on Facebook and Instagram. There's other platforms. We could talk about LinkedIn. We could talk about LinkedIn. We could talk about TikTok is blown up. Do yourself a favor, don't join TikTok because it's the most incredibly addicting thing known to man. I think they've tapped into some primordial need for short attention span people like me. You just getting lost in it. My wife's like, "Are you on TikTok again?" But we kind of want to focus on Facebook and Instagram. So, KJ, in your opinion, what are the key? I mean, I think visually you can see the difference. I'm going to share my screen here. But in your opinion, like what are the key differences in terms of Facebook and Instagram as they pertain to marketing a small business?
Sure. I think the one thing that you want to think about them is what is it that you're really trying to accomplish with that? Think of it through the lens of what is it that I really want to be telling? What kind of story do I really want to be telling? And why that's important to be telling that particular story for your business. And that's really going to kind of dictate where you're posting your content to. So if you think about it, there is a fundamental difference between what those two platforms do. Really think about Instagram as a place to share photos and show videos and kind of interact with your audience. Whereas Facebook, you can do that and you can build communities, groups, live events, you can have an online store presence. It makes it a lot easier for people to kind of shop and interact with your brand, although Instagram is catching up to that. So it really depends on what it is that you want to achieve with your goals. So you can leverage one more than the other, depending on what your goals are, but with the end user in mind and kind of thinking through what is it that my customers want to see from me? What's the best way for me to communicate with them? And what kind of content should I be sharing with them? Those are some of the key questions that somebody should ask themselves when determining what platform's best for them.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm on one of our customers, their website. This is Extreme Graphics. They're in Oregon, very successful company. They're a full service graphics company, but I think they've done a pretty marvelous job of telling their story visually on what they do. They even have hypertext links in here to galleries. These are links to galleries, so they've showcased their work, the kind of things that they're doing. It's pretty obvious, what their business is all about. They have some community awareness posts in here, showing off some of their equipment. Um, Here's a little testimonial in here that they've included. They have a link to their website and their contact form, basic simple bio. So, obviously when you're on an Instagram page, it has 100% of your attention because you don't have all the distractions of all the other content that's streaming in. It's another one of our clients, which is a company, is a hockey supply company in Canada, and they've taken this. It's really kind of interesting what they've done. They mix in some memes. They've got some live video of things going on in the hockey community. That's a nice forecheck there. But then they also kind of spin in some relative content on their merch. So here's promoting their merch right here. There's actually quite a bit of merch promotion in here, but they spin in relative content so they keep your interest with some of these hockey highlights and some of these funny memes and things, and then boom, they hit you with merch.
Yeah.
And but there's a lot of distractions in here, and I have to be really involved in this. And I think most people are aware on a business account. Business account, you don't have friends. In business accounts, you have likes. And so a lot of times people get confused in Facebook. I have a Facebook account. Well, you have a personal account, but you don't have a business account. And then they're like, well, how do I get a business account? Well, you sign up for a business account. It's a new account. And then what you do is you pin on your personal account, follow me on my business account, because you want to get them on a business account, because there's a lot of other tools that you can use on a business account, like paid advertising. So that's one of the key differences. But yeah, it is visually, the platforms are very different. And I don't know how your habits are, KJ, but I go to Facebook to see how checking in my relatives. Is there something that's going on with family? And I go to Instagram to see what my kids are doing, because they've posted their whole lives and videos of what they're up to on their Instagram.
Yeah.
So any other comments that you'd like to throw in there on the
Yeah, I
differences?
think, you highlighted some of our customers and how they're leveraging social media. One couple things that really kind of jumped out to me is you see a lot of community building, especially with bar down hockey. You see some things that are fun. You also see some things that have to do with their company. You don't necessarily see everything being a sales pitch. They've done
Right.
a good job of interacting with people. You can see they're tagging people, where they put the @ sign and then a name of another company or individual, and it allows them to tag them, and then they can have that direct interaction with that particular brand. And you can also see how to contact them. There's just a lot of great information. Their URL is there. So they're looking at this as like a digital billboard as well, and a place for community. They're not just looking at it as a sales outlet, because who do you want to interact with that they're always trying to pitch you? They're always trying to pitch you and say, hey, buy this, buy this. Or do you want to be in a place where you can really have a sense of, these are things that I'm really passionate about and I'm really into, and social media gives me that outlet to be able to find out more about that. Oh, and by the way, they sell great merch. They have some really cool graphics, and they're doing some really incredible things in the community. I'm more likely to do business with them because they have that sense of community, and they're doing things within the community, and they're contributing to the community, than they are just trying to give me a sales pitch.
Yeah, and I would imagine, like, Bardon, I know for a fact they have a professional social media team. They work with an ad agency. They have a whole social media team, and that's probably why their site is so polished. But I think you can emulate a lot of those same techniques as just an individual or a business owner. I don't think you have to have a social media team to do that. It was interesting. I was on TikTok, and there's an airline called Ryanair, and they posted their first ever TikTok, and it was like, hey, um, asking all verified accounts to just post something random on this post, and it was hilarious because they had thousands of posts from verified accounts and people just posting all this random stuff. And there was all the social media managers, these professional social media managers, and it became a contest to be more clever. And I'm just going to tell you, there's two accounts on any social media platform. Steakums, the people that do the meat product for making Philly cheesesteaks, and Wendy's, that have a highly refined and very funny and engaging social media presence. But if you're not in that league, please do not try to compete with them, because it can fall down. You can go down in flames. So, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, you don't need to have a professional social media management team. But what are some guidelines and some things, just some best practices and things if you're going to do it yourself?
sure. So let's kind of take a step back and think about what those social platforms can really do for a business, and how a business can fully
Perfect.
utilize tools um, on those social platforms. So, for example, you just need to really start with something that you mentioned, Craig, and that's that you need to have a business page, not a personal page. If you've built up a large following on your personal account and you don't have a business page yet, you're missing out on some opportunities for new clients or new customers to discover you. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you have that business account, and when you set it up, you want to make sure that you have a photo in your profile picture that really represents who you are as a business, and in your background picture, kind of something that kind of conveys your business story as well. You also want to add a call to action button that business pages will allow you to do, and it could be something as simple as contact us for more information or visit our website. And then you want to fill out all the different areas within the profile page, because what this will do is it'll make it easier for search engines and new customers to find your business, because you'll see a direct correlation between being searchable and being on social media. If your competitors are on there and somebody's looking for branded merchandise or cool graphics or killer t-shirts, and they're Googling that in their area, and somebody's on social media and you're not, and they have a business page, but maybe you don't have a business page, they're going to rank higher in those Google results than you are. So it's really important to fill out that fundamental base information within the business page. Then you need to move on kind of what your content is, what content is going to really appeal to your target audience or your customer. Videos perform better than photos, but it can't just be a random video. It needs to be something very specific. Make it a video that that your customers would want to watch, that they really kind of enjoy seeing. On the hockey example, we saw people playing the sport, so we know that target audience is really going to want to see those kind of videos. So for you, if you're targeting a particular type of business, perhaps you're focused on a particular type of industry, make sure that those videos that you're putting are relevant to that target audience on there. And the amount of what you're putting on there really matters as well. So if you think about it in terms of 4 posts, 3 of those posts should be really about your content passively selling your business, kind of like the example that we saw. And 25% or 1 of those posts should only be about like a direct sales or direct call to action within the post in there. Because again, like I had said before, nobody really wants to be always being pitched. It kind of gets annoying after a while. You don't want to exacerbate your audience on social media. But last but not least, and I'll say this real quick, Craig, is that you really want to leverage Facebook's targeting tools as well in the settings that you will have on your business page, and that will help make sure that your content gets to the right audience.
Yeah, so there's a lot of configurations that you can do within both of the platforms, and there's so much good internet information on the internet about how to do those things. There's really no excuses anymore. A quick Google search on, targeting in the word Facebook is going to give you more. There's people that make a living driving advertising through their YouTube channels, teaching people how to do this stuff. So there's certainly a plethora of information available, and that's one of the tricky things. You talked a little bit about posting relevant content. I don't think you're trying to compete with Madison Avenue. And you talk about videos. I'll show you a really good example of a video of one of our clients. You tell me what you think, KJ. This is one of our shared our GraphicsFlow InkSoft clients, Jill Clark, and here's her website. I use this site quite often because she's got such a huge Instagram following. But she has all these stores and things that she's hosting on her site, and you have a link to her Instagram, and so she'll utilize her her social media presence to land these customers. I was talking to her, and she goes, pretty much, this store is closed here, but she says pretty much every customer she's landed from Instagram. Like her whole business, she says, I do no advertising. I have a retail store. I close the doors. My new business comes from Instagram, and she drives clients to her InkSoft stores to do their purchasing. And so when you go to her Instagram, what you will notice right away, she's got, it's got kind of an interesting little thing here. It says no DMs, thank you. She doesn't want direct messages. You can go to her website and fill out a form. But she posts these reveal videos, and they're just cool. Like, so I asked her how she does it, and she said, Craig, before we box up the order, we just put the shirts out on a table, or we have them sitting on the press, and we fold them up and we have some good lighting, and we just take a quick little video. And she has gotten hashtags down to a science, and so she'll always at the people that are involved. So she uses the at from Pembroke Cheerleading there, so they're involved and they'll amplify it. And then she uses she's got a standard cut and paste that she uses for her hashtags, and she will post these, and some of these, get hundreds of views, and and likes, but this is her advertising program. She literally needs nothing else. And that she has equity. If she ever went to sell her business, which I don't believe she would, but if she ever would, she's got equity in 16,300 followers on Instagram, which I think is for a small business is respectable. So when you talk about doing video, putting a static photo of a product versus something like this, I think it's way more impactful. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Video tells a much more compelling story. And if you think about the effort that went into her making the video, it's nothing more than her really kind of getting her phone, laying some pieces of merchandise out, and taking a quick report of them. And it's easy as uploading that. That's how
Yep.
simple it. She hasn't overcomplicated it. She's stuck to her core customer, which is in this particular space. It has to do with cheer and rhinestone and decoration and kind of that blinged out look, which is really, relevant for this target audience. And she's kind of gotten it down to where she's communicating with them in such a way that they want to engage with that content. They want to see what's coming from her. So I guess my encouragement to the businesses out there that might be a little bit hesitant or haven't set up social media yet is that here's a living, breathing example of something that's super simple for you to do to get set up. You don't need more than just your phone to get started. And with the use of hashtags that we'll talk a little bit more in depth about here in a minute, you can open up doors to new opportunities and new sales and new customers.
Yeah, one of the things that okay, so on my personal Instagram, I don't know how I did it, but on my personal Instagram, I ended up with 3 Instagram accounts. I only remember signing up for one. And so what happened, I must have clicked at some point to automatically, dynamically create an Instagram account from my personal Facebook account, and because my kids immediately followed me, like, oh, Dad's on Instagram. So the thing is with Facebook and Instagram, you can have linked accounts now, and they share information back and forth. And it actually works with Messenger. The Facebook Messenger app is all linked into all that now. That's relatively new. So there are some advantages to having your 2 accounts linked together with the platform. One of them is when you post. It was interesting. I originally found Jill's social media on her Facebook link, and she works out at the same gym I do, and I was chatting and with her. She goes, Craig, I don't post on Facebook. I go, what do you mean you don't post on Facebook? She goes, I don't remember posting on Facebook. I auto post from my Instagram, and she literally puts no juice. I don't think really any, no, none, zero. She puts zero juice into her Facebook, and her Facebook presence, she's got 2070. She puts all her juice into her Instagram in her market, which is, CrossFit, cheer, dance, all that kind of world. Probably makes a little bit more sense. But she has her accounts linked. In a sense, it's kind of, to me, it feels it's kind of lazy. And I know we don't do that in our company. We do separate posting for Facebook and Instagram. We don't, if we need to share it, we'll share it. But we do it. We keep them independent. What's your thoughts on, linking accounts and auto posting from Instagram to Facebook? Because you can't go the other way. You go from Instagram to Facebook, but not Facebook to Instagram. What's your thoughts on that?
I would say, I would say first, think of them as two unique platforms, and you want to have kind of a strategy or plan for each one. And then once you determine what that strategy or plan is, then you can see what tools one that you can leverage for one for the other. So, for example, if you are doing nothing but third-party T-shirt orders and you're printing graphics on there on your orders and you're delivering them, you can do unboxed videos like this or pre-ship videos like this as an example. And you can set it to where that will also post on your Facebook. So it's easy, no heavy lifting to do. But it's really starting off with deciding like, what is it that I want to achieve and asking yourself that question, and then you can do it. And then once you get in there, you can see what tools they offer to kind of work back and forth and off of each other. I would say though that it is wise to make sure that you're posting at the same time. So if she's posting this on Instagram, that she is ensuring that is posting at the same time on Facebook, because that just opens you up to a wider audience. When you leverage that with hashtags, it opens up the audience even more. So it's all about opening up the audience and opening up the audience, opening up the audience. And sometimes you can leverage it with one's auto posting to the other, but that's not necessarily a deal killer.
Yeah, I mean, I know the folks that are quote influencers. they've got their posting schedules down to a science, and they do it very specific times. And I think an average business is probably not going to operate at that level of sophistication. But one of the things that I think, not being critical of Jill, but in general, Facebook is going to be more interactive. And the best way to explain for me that I like to explain that is, if she posts to Facebook and she gets a comment, she doesn't have a lot of comments on her Facebook posts. She's got a few comments, but if she has a bunch of people following and somebody comments on there, that might cause that comment to pop up on the timeline of that other person and might trip a person in another part of the country to see this wonderful video and says, "Oh, can you do that for me?" And so creating that interactivity by encouraging comments is what kind of when the Facebook algorithm can cause that particular video to show up on your feed. And I'm always kind of interested to see, like on my Facebook feed, which I basically check Facebook once a day to see how my relatives are doing. Like, where did this come from? And then I can usually backtrack and figure out, oh, that's where it came from. This buddy of mine is friends with this person, and I showed an interest in soccer, and now I got the soccer thing. So the algorithms are very, very powerful. I don't think you're going to trick the algorithms in Facebook or Instagram anymore. I think in the old days you could trick the algorithms. I don't think you can anymore. Maybe you can, but I think they've gotten pretty sophisticated. What thoughts on that?
It would be not
Or,
not a good use of your time if you're trying to trick the algorithms. Really, what the social media platforms want you to do is to have an authentic community of engaged users. So I'll give you an example, and this is getting a little geeky, but that's what we do in marketing.
yes,
When you post something, where it lands in somebody's news feed depends on a lot of factors, and you only have control over a really small percentage of those factors. The way that you want to think about it is if it's relevant, if it's timely, if people see it, they start interacting with it, they start clicking on it, then it's going to move it up in people's newsfeed. If not, it'll actually push it down in people's newsfeed because what the when it comes down to it, these are marketing companies that want your attention. You're their greatest commodity, is that you have their attention. And if something does not have your attention, they'll get rid of it and give you something that does have your attention.
yep,
So you really want to be authentic with what you're posting. And it's not necessarily about nailing down the time of day, what it is. It's really, is that something that your followers are going to interact with? That's
right.
the question that you should ask yourself. That can be the filter for you to know whether it's worth posting or not. And then you can get into frequency and the use of hashtags and everything else. But it really just starts with that core content and how relative that core content is to the people that are following you.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example of that real world example. We have a client that their high school won the conference championship in their local high school, and habitually had not been a good team, so it was a big deal in the community. So she was desperate in need of a graphic, and she had just signed up for GraphicsFlow. So she pinged me and says help, and I said book me for a meeting tomorrow morning. I'll give you a little training. We'll get it done. So we did the graphic for it. It actually turned out really well, and she posted it on Facebook. And the challenge that she has is that the only way she could print these was with a her direct to garment printer, and she's got hundreds and hundreds of orders, and she is just driven through her Facebook advertising. It kind of happened organically because people from her community follow her Facebook. It just became this thing, and I'd venture to say I need to check in with her to find out how many new followers she has in Facebook, just as a result of this sales campaign. And the graphic turned out it was pretty sweet actually. I think it was this one. It was the graphic that we ended up doing. Is this it? No, that's not it. But it was, her whole business was driven off Facebook, and then she's got this challenge now, which is delivery. And I told her one of the pieces of advice I gave her. I said, listen, you need to be flexible on the colors that you're offering, and you're just going to offer a T-shirt. You're not going to offer a brand, a quality level. You're going to have a price, and that's it. You got to maintain flexibility because you've got enough order volume right now. You could get yourself into trouble with in terms of sourcing blanks. But it was just a simple design with the kids, and and we got the roster there, and it turned out pretty nice. But that whole sales campaign was driven from Facebook, and she
Yeah.
promised me she was going to send me a photo of the printed product, but I haven't seen it yet. But I'll keep stock. She's probably on the webcast today. But as a classic example, as far as posting frequency, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So it depends on each platform. These are kind of rules of thumb. There is no definitive, this is how much you do it. Once you start having lots of followers, like the company that we looked at earlier had 16,000 followers. When you have more than 10,000 followers, this becomes a little bit more relevant. But when you're just you're just starting out, kind of here's some rules of thumb. On Instagram, it's really posting about 3 to 7 times a week. For Facebook, it's posting between 1 and 2 times a day. Twitter, it's between 1 and 5 tweets a day. And for LinkedIn, it's posting between 1 and 5 times a day. So you can see that there is no exact science of how you do it. You treat each channel differently for your different audiences. But here's the, if you wrote none of that down, here's what you do want to remember is that you want to post frequently and interact. The more you interact, the more the people are going to be engaged with their content. The more they're engaged with the content, more people are going to see it. The more people see it, the more it's going to be recommended. And you can see this compounding effect that happens with you putting engaging content out there.
Right. No, I agree. I have this is another example of a client that their space is kind of military and fire and police and first responder. They do some wonderful work, but they basically use their Instagram as a portfolio. There's really, I mean, it is, they're just using it as a portfolio of their work. I can think of another platform that would do a good job of that called GraphicsFlow, do a similar type of thing. But this is their portfolio work, and they've built up a nice following as well. So 15,300 followers, not too bad. They've done this is another one of our clients, and she's kind of just getting started. But I really love what she did with her photography and the way she showcases products. I just think it's a wonderful, kind of example of some creative things that you can do instead of just taking a photo. This is a video, I believe. Instead of just taking a photo of, a static product, but, giving it a background, and, she's obviously gone in and put some thought into this, and it looks really good, put a little effect on it, turned it into a video. So, I think, one of the things that occurs to me is, when people are manufacturing products, one of the things that they oftentimes fail to do is take a photo or create a sample. Okay, and let me give you a good example. When we had our Desert Sportswear, our collegiate sportswear company, we had 30 sales reps. Right on our order form, it had a little checkbox that said sample request. And what sample request means is the salesperson can order one more shirt or however many you wanted in with that order when it came through. Why did we do that? Because that was in my sample bag. So when I would go and meet with that, another client, I could show them representative examples did for this person. And that sample to me was literally one of the most valuable assets that I had in my business. You now have a thing called the internet. You have a thing called social media. You can do that. And you should be taking product photography. It should just be part of your process. You should be taking product photography of your products as they get wrapped up and finished before they go in the box. And whether you're doing it video style, like what Joel was doing, or if you're doing it this way where you're staging it and lighting it, I think it just should be a standard part of your process, because that is becoming your portfolio of your work. Now, if it's just a boring logo, maybe not so important, but maybe it's a boring logo on a cool garment or on a cool product. Maybe it's a tumbler, a new style of tumbler. That should just be a standard part of your process, is taking that photography. Any thoughts on that, KJ?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not something that you have to invest a lot into. You just, you get your phone, you put it on photography setting, and you take some photos and you post them. It's as simple as that. You'll refine your style over time, and you might even hire a photographer to do some layout for you in the future once you start to see that return on investment. But it's definitely should be something that each store or individual or somebody just starting out or anybody that's in the space should be doing as part of their marketing efforts.
So I want to talk a little bit about how a social media campaign, um, or how an e-commerce campaign interacts with social media. And we had Mark Heiss, one of our clients from Yellow Springs, Ohio, on, and he did a webcast on print on demand, and it was interesting talking to Mark. He was talking about he does a lot of work with in the kind of the natural space, meaning parks and rec and trail, like park trails and things in his community. And this is one of his stores, and he was describing about the success of the store is really going to be dependent upon how well the 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 the, the the company that's sponsoring the store promotes it through social media. It says if the company promotes it through social media, the store will do well. If they don't promote it through social media, they won't. And he said that's one of the hardest things that he has to kind of get across to the these buyers, so that if you want to sell product merch online, you got to have two things. You have to have things that look cool that people want to buy, and you have to be able to promote it via your social media. How do you tie a social media campaign to an e-commerce store? Obviously, you have the tools. This is an InkSoft store right here. You have the tools within InkSoft to do that, but how would you go about doing just like a little miniature campaign? You know,
Yeah, the first thing to do is really kind of create a plan. You get out a piece of pencil and a tape and a piece of paper and a pencil, and you determine what your goals and your objectives are for that particular plan. What is it that you want to get out of the effort? Because it might be more sales, it might be to drive more traffic to your brick and mortar store. But what is it that you really want to achieve? You want to create a compelling value proposition and then post that to your social media. So for example, you might be running a discount for, say, veterans, tomorrow being Veterans Day. So post what that discount is, where people can find it and what they need to do to get it. It doesn't have to be that complicated, but you do want to start with a plan. You can take a look at several examples, online and see who's doing it well. Here's one in front of you. It's just sharing that link. And you're going to find, and you probably know this already in your own experience for the participants here on this educational series, is that referrals are your best source of customers, right? That's your gold. That is money in the bank, those referrals. And social media can serve as that place for more referrals on there, because people are going to listen to their peers. Hey, where can I get this order fulfilled? Craig's t-shirt shop. Here's his Facebook page. Here's his Instagram account. Really, it's really essential that you have some sort of presence on social media that allows people to find you and allows you to take part in these campaigns that we're seeing.
yeah, it was interesting with Mark. I asked him, other than the fact that he's a hippie, by his own admission, I asked him, I said, Mark, how did you end up landing in, with all these, parks and recs associations and trail associations, and how did you end up landing that? And he says, well, number one, I have a personal interest in that, but number two, I was in a Facebook group, and somebody had posted a post about, hey, if I need to get merch, where should I get merch? And he was recommended to them through the Facebook post, and then that Facebook post blew up, and there was all these people that Mark had used or was interested in. He cultivated that into these customers, and I think it just had somewhat of a snowball effect. So being active in industry groups is also, I think, a pretty good move. And obviously, you have to be careful and you have to be really sensitive about how you post in any kind of community group, especially us. We're industry, well-known folks in the industry, so I try to be pretty incognito. But I thought it was interesting how that snowballed, and now he's got, I don't know, like 15 or 20 stores that just came from that one Facebook post. And then what is the volume that he did through the course of the year? It's invaluable just by staying involved and engaged. As far as driving promotions, are you better off doing a short term, like if you're doing a InkSoft store, say, promotion where you're going to do an e-commerce store, are you better off just making it a limited time offer? Do you recommend using Facebook advertising? What are some of the techniques that people might do to promote their store?
It's dependent, Craig, on what the goal is. So let's just create a scenario where the goal is to get more sales. You want to get more sales, you want to do something that's sustainable and something that you can spread out for a long time so that more people can see that. So you come up with you get your pencil and your paper, you write down, my goal is to get more sales. How am I going to do that? I'm going to create a compelling value proposition, and I'm going to tell people what that value proposition is and how they can take advantage of it by posting on my social media. So for Veterans Day, we're giving 50% off for all orders to any veterans group. Sale ends Thursday night. It's a very compelling value proposition. Visit our website for more details. You've got a clear call to action on what you're asking people to do, and it's tying back to the action that you want them to take. They go to your web store, and then they can see what that particular offer is and whatnot. The key thing that you want to do is that you want to be consistent throughout the process. So consistent look, consistent feel, consistent messaging, consistent images, so that in people's minds, it's one seamless transition from one digital platform to another on there. So that was something that I would say is really important. The second thing I'd say is really important is that this is where you call in some favors and you say, hey, hey mom, hey dad, hey brother, hey sister, hey son, hey daughter, whomever. I need you to get on here and put a comment in the comment box. I need you to
There you go.
share that. I need you to post this to your friend's account and just say, hey, check this out. It doesn't have to be anything heavy. It can be something very simple, something very direct, but having them interact with the post is essential to getting more traffic to ultimately your web store and what you're trying to achieve. But that will help tremendously.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting. I have a former employee, and anytime we would post something on Instagram, he would always comment. It was always something really positive. I think he was trying to get his old job back or what, but it was actually really helpful. I'll share an idea with you guys that has proven to be quite successful for one of my other clients, and he gave me permission to share this. This is an idea that what my client would do is he would run a special on left chest, 100% cotton left chest t-shirts. Okay, why left chest t-shirts? Why would he do that? This is how he would do it. He would get a heat transfer made, a stock transfer made on a 13 by 19 transfer sheet. It's a common size for the heat press companies. He would do a 3-color transfer, and he would create these pocket designs for the local schools, and he'd figure out how many different school combinations he can do with those 3 colors, because he had to order those transfers, he had to pay by the color. So he'd always do white, gold, and then another color, or whatever color combinations he would do. He'd order these transfers, and he said he'd order in 100 sheets. He would trim them all up, and he'd run a ad on. He'd actually create a post on Facebook, and he'd pay for a Facebook boost ad that was actually targeted at the local high school communities in his area. And he said $10 pocket tee. The little store set up $10 pocket tee. Nobody really has to think much on a $10 pocket tee. It's a good deal, right? T-shirt's going to cost him $3. These at the most, the transfers are going to cost him a quarter of a piece the way he's doing it that way. And he said, Craig, every time I do this, I sell 200-300 shirts. I said I got a nominal investment in transfers, and then whatever I was left with, I would just run a closeout special, maybe for $8, and blow out the rest, and then I'd let it sit underground for 3-4 months, and then pop it up again and do that promotion all over again. I was thinking about now with the advent of direct to film transfers, he was having to limit himself because he was doing screen printed transfers, and he had specific ink colors. Hey, Cupcake, she's up for the day. Um, with the direct to film transfer where colors are limitless, you could literally just create a sheet of transfers and have a row, the top row, school A, second row, 6, 7, 8 rows. You could do 8 schools on one transfer sheet and do the same program. But he said the trick for him was doing the boost with the Facebook ad. And he was a huge believer in that. And I remember last time, I'm sure prices have changed, but he said, I could spend 25, $30 on a Facebook boost. And that was the game changer for that kind of promotion. What are your thoughts on paying? Because I know we do paid Facebook ads. What are your thoughts in terms of like a small independent business person trying to play that game, trying to guess the target audience and the hashtags and all the
Yeah.
the necessities for doing a Facebook boost? What do you think it's reasonable for somebody to do that?
Well, the deck is stacked against you if you don't utilize those options within Facebook, if you're not paying for a placement. I'll share some numbers with you. So let's just say you have 1,000 people that follow your business on Facebook. If you post that organically, that means no paid advertising. If you just post it, you're probably going to be between 2 and 3% of those people. So maybe 20 to 30 people are actually out of your 1,000 are going to see that particular post on there. Whereas if you put $10 behind it, you do some very targeted, I want it to be in this particular area. We happen to be in Tempe, Arizona, so I want it to be in Tempe, Arizona. I want it to be directed at ASU because ASU is right down the street from us. And I want to hit this age between 25 and 45 years old, and I'm going to spend $10 a day. I'm going to be seen by thousands and thousands of people now versus that 20 to 30. So I would say that if somebody is going to promote their business and do more than just community building on social media, it's imperative that they have a boosting strategy in place.
Glad you said that because I think it's a it's easy for somebody to look at the financial outlay and make a justification. Well, I can't really afford $10 a day. But if you're spending $10 a day and you're spending $70 a week, and you were producing $400, $500, $600 in revenue, and even with, like I say, a 40% GPM on that, um, you know, you're only spending 10 or 15% of your revenue on that. You can increase the cost of the selling price of your product to cover that as well. But I think it's just getting that targeted, just knowing what keywords to select and what audience to target is always the really hard one. And I think being able to go and watch some YouTube videos and really see some of the experts on doing that, I think it's not something you can just wing. You really have to do a little bit of research on that.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as put yourself in the customer's shoes and ask yourself, what are the things that they're interested in? Know what those things are. If you're serving a particular community, so using the college example again, I'm going to see um, what a college community is into. They're obviously going to be Sun Devil supporters, so that's going to be one of their interests. I'm going to note that down. I'm going to note where they're geographically located. I'm going to note that down. And they like football. So let's say those 3 psychographic bits of information will give you a lot to work on when it comes to targeting market. And it's something that you can do just by looking up, some of the businesses that you might be printing for if you're doing B2B, or some of the targets that you want to actually get. Maybe you want to break into schools, and it's really important for you to open up that new line of business for you. It's just having those bits of information that's going to help you target and get the right message to the right person at the right time. And by doing a little bit of legwork like that, you'll be able to do it. Like Craig said, you can't just wing it, but you do want to do a little bit of research. And if you're intentional and you're measured with your budget, you can easily make pivoting decisions. So for example, if you put a campaign out there, you say you're going to spend $10 a day on it, and it's going gangbusters, you might say, I'm going to double my budget and see what happens. You spend $20 a day and it continues to go up, and you say, okay, this is probably as much as I can only fulfill so many orders, so this is probably going to be my limit. But what you can do is, one of the beautiful things is you can actually see who interacted with your ad. So post campaign, you can take a look at, it was mostly male, and they were between these ages, and they were in this geographic location, and they interacted with our mobile phone. So next time that you go to do this, you'll have that demographic and psychographic information that you can then utilize for your campaign. And that is really important in any type of marketing campaign, and especially for social media, because everything that we see on social media is directed to our likes, our needs, our wants, our desires, the things that we are subscribing to in our lives.
Excellent. Hashtags. Thoughts on hashtags? How important is it?
Hashtags are very important. Let's just talk about what a hashtag is first, for those that may not know. A hashtag it has a pound or a number sign and then a word. And what that does is it allows you to label and find social media content. So let's just say t-shirts, hashtag or pound t-shirts. That will allow people to search for that term on social media and find your content grouped within other amounts of content that are in there that are using similar hashtags. So it'll break it down by category. It makes it really makes your content really discoverable, is what it goes down to, and it really helps other people to engage. So if you're a particular fan of, let's say, um, specialized decorated apparel, you might not put hashtag decorated apparel, but you might put decorator, hashtag apparel, hashtag t-shirts, and use a different combination um, of words with hashtags. It's going to make your content that much more searchable and findable by your target audience. So hashtags are really important for any social media strategy.
Yeah, and one of the things you can do, you can also see what competitors or people in like businesses are using for their hashtags. In the case of like Jill Clark on her Instagram, um, she hashtags she has a word file, and she has all the common hashtags that are kind of in her market segment. And you can certainly, just take a right mouse click to copy that into Microsoft Word to do that. And one of the questions from Pam King was, there's a reason that why everyone just doesn't have a great outstanding Facebook page, even with all the videos, and that some of us just don't get it. For the life of me, I cannot do what everyone else finds to be so easy and frustrating. It's a really good point. And I'll give you a good example of a kind of a neat thing that happened to one of our customers, and this was in the depth of the pandemic. And this customer was highly reliant on going to events and would do actual decoration at the events. And an older gentleman who's very near and dear to my heart. We've known each other for a long time, and just one of my special people. And he was very frustrated. He had no opportunity to make sales during the pandemic, and I just asked him. I said, Paul, what do you're not doing anything online? And he goes, no. He says, I don't do computers. I don't do technology. It's just not my thing. He's part of a veterans organization, and the veterans organization he has a license to sell for this veterans bikers organization. And I said, why don't you do this? You're on the Facebook group for the organization, right? He goes, yeah, we have a big Facebook group. I said, why don't you just go on there and post and say, hey, listen, I need some help setting up e-commerce and Facebook for my business. People line up to help him. And he has a rather snappy little Facebook presence. I told him, I said, you're getting kind of out there in the technology now. And he's like, yeah, I didn't do any of it. Another guy works. But you shouldn't be afraid to ask somebody that's knowledgeable. The people that are experts at this are your teenagers. They're your college students. These are, my kids.
Some of your
But
younger, some of the younger employees
younger
that
employees, members of your staff.
somebody that
Um,
might work in a press, you can, split some of their time and have them do some of your social media marketing. So even if you're not necessarily comfortable with it, you're going to probably have somebody in your shop or in your circle, in your business that you might even employ to do this for you.
And one of the things that I would recommend, there's all kinds of marketing students out there, if you live anywhere near a university, that are looking to do their marketing internship. And we did that in our company and did the marketing internship and got our Instagram really spruced up. You can contact the community college or the local universities and say, hey, listen, I'm looking for a marketing intern to manage my social media. People will literally line up to do that because they have to get that completed as part of their graduation requirements. Can't promise you're going to get a great person to do that, but it is a really, honestly, it's a really good strategy. One of the questions that we got, it was an interesting question, was about, I do mostly custom work, meaning this individual is doing like bulk orders, right? And so because they're doing bulk orders, it's not really conducive to, like what we'd call print on demand. So like if you were looking at Mark Heiss's website, when these orders, he has a direct to film printer. And so when his orders come in, he just prints transfers and prints the shirts as they go. And the way his pricing model is built, he's built his pricing model based on a revenue share model. And so the company Gear for the Glen, they're getting a percentage of every one of these transactions. The reason he's able to get this business is they don't have to stock anything. And what you're seeing in the trend in our industry is in a lot of these companies, they don't want to stock things because they don't want to have inventory tied up. When you have inventory, you have to have the right shirts, the right color, the right sizing. Sizing's problematic now, because of the supplier shortages. So it is much easier to do one of these kind of merch campaigns with a print on demand production technique. So what are the kind of techniques you can do that with? Certainly you can do that with sublimation if you have direct garment printing, a laser transfer system, a vinyl cutter. But quite honestly, now with the advent of direct to film transfers, 10 sheet minimum. You can order 10 master sheets. You could get 2 designs on a master sheet. You have 20 transfers. You could run one of these programs or just take a flyer on the transfers. And then when you're done and you've used them up, just order another 10 sheets. So the concept of, hey, you're a screen printer and I can't afford to do these small orders, and you don't really have to worry about that anymore if you have a heat press and you're ordering in these full color transfers that are so popular now, like the transfers that you'd see from people like Supacolor, like that. So you can do it without having to have quote pre-printed merch. You just have to use, I think heat transfers is going to be your best bet unless you have a direct to garment printer. Okay.
Craig, you had said that one of the questions coming through was about somebody just not knowing how to do this or getting it. Well,
Right.
something that's done at InkSoft is we hear our customers say that. So we've actually helped them with social media marketing guides, and if they go to inksoft.com, you'll be able to find our ultimate guide to social to marketing branded merchandise. And in there, we have a lot of cut and paste copy that you can utilize in our resources. Even there at the top, you can see that you can download it, and that will give you cut and paste options to professionally written copy that you can put in your campaigns, and it'll make your social media marketing that much easier for you because we really care about our customers.
Honestly, KJ, I think one of the better resources for marketing in our industry is the InkSoft website. The amount of energy that goes in, especially like the marketing kits and things that go into giving you guys the tools. From my experience being in the business as long as I've been, never be ashamed to do R&D. R&D is rip off and duplicate, which it means find a company that's successful, that has a good social media presence, somebody you admire, and emulate what they're doing. You're not going to steal their ideas. You're not taking their trademarked or copyrighted materials. What you're doing is you're using them as inspiration, and you're modeling your plan off their inspiration. And it's kind of what InkSoft has done with these marketing kits, is that we've provided the inspiration, and we're welcoming you to utilize it to kind of step up the level of your business. I would say the last thing that I want to do today before we stop the recording, I just want to lend some encouragement. And it's been my experience as a human being that people don't change unless they have experienced some level of suffering. And we've all gone through a pretty traumatic experience here in the last couple of years, coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic. And I think one of the really positive things that has happened as a result of that has been, it has forced people to kind of take a close look at their business and their practices and how they're doing things. And it's opened up a lot of minds, and people are more willing to take the steps. And the thing is, if you take 2 steps forward and you only take 1 step back, guess what? You're going to still get there, but you have to take that first step. And I would encourage all of you to do a self inventory of your social media plan, kind of what KJ was saying, is get the pen and paper out there, rate yourself. Where can I do better? What am I doing right? What can I do better? What are the things that I want to change? I probably wouldn't put a timeline on it. I would probably set it up as a checklist and leave the dates open-ended. But you have to take action. And my dad used to say, nothing changes if nothing changes. So, our overall goal here today in the class was to kind of plant some seeds, was to expose you guys to some ideas, and to kind of gently encourage you to take some action. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the world's greatest Facebook page. You don't have to have this amazing knock your socks off Instagram page, but you got to start somewhere, and there's always going to be room for improvement. Anything else you'd like to add to that, KJ?
Yeah, it just starts with getting going, just getting up and doing it. You probably got some incredible branded merchandise that you can showcase on your phone already. So it's just, I encourage everybody to do it. It's a simple Google search to get started. There's lots of free tools out there, not a lot of investment. It just takes a little bit of time and sweat equity, and get something up and going and see some successful campaigns running.
Excellent. Well, KJ, thank you so much for coming on. I will have you on again sometime. That was fantastic. Cupcake mostly behaved. I think we had 1 bark there, and we looks like we woke her up from her nap. So thanks again for coming and hanging out with us today. There will be a recording. You can always go to the GraphicsFlow YouTube channel. You will get a email more than likely tomorrow with a link to the recording, and then next week's class. So thank you again for joining us here today, and thanks again, KJ, for being our special guest. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll answer any remaining questions.